Oh, good morning. For those of you that are new to the West Virginia Pre-K, this will probably be a very useful webinar. For those of you that have been with us for the last 5 or 6 years, it may seem like a lot of redundancy. Not a lot has changed in the transportation arena in the last 5 or 6 years. Few small changes, but it's still an area that when we're out reviewing, it's very important to us how we transport these young learners. So I'm going to be preparing and doing the slides this morning, but for those of you that don't know Ben Shu is the Executive Director for the Office of Transportation. He helps put this together, and he also is very involved with the training slides we're going to talk about today. So if you are using our training for bus drivers, that would actually be Ben Shu who has helped put that together. So when we get to those sections, those of you out in the county systems that are working with your transportation director, they're going to be very familiar with Ben and the work he's done. If you're in the Head Start community, most of our Head Start community is also very familiar with Ben because he is very, very in tune to the needs of Head Start and how they transport and their requirements for transporting young children. So this is not going to be a very long webinar this morning. If we go more than 25 or 30 minutes, I will be shocked. But I'll take you through it as painlessly as I can. And if you have any questions, type them in, and we'll go ahead and get started. Transportation used to be really buried in the policy. It was part of a massive health and safety section of the policy in the past. In 2012, transportation got pulled out and actually received its own section. Again, when it got pulled out, not a lot of things changed. It was just to bring the importance that transportation needs to be looked at separately in its own light, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Everything we talk about today comes from Section 7 of West Virginia Policy 2525. So if you're referring to the policy or you're going to be using it with staff or your county collaborative team, it is now in Section 7. We're going to be focusing really on number 1 and number 3 today. The introduction to pre-K and transportation requirements, how we're articulating pre-K to our transportation collaborations, and we're going to be focusing on Section 3, and that's the loading and unloading of children. Those tend to be, especially number 3, tends to be the area we see the most concern when we're out in the field, and it's actually the area out of the Office of Transportation that is becoming the most concerning in the field. Section 2, supervision of young children, I'll briefly discuss that today, but really we're going to provide the resources to you. And again, if you're using this for training for transportation for bus drivers, that would be the section they would probably tend to focus on. And they would also meet the requirement in policy for all bus drivers transporting preschool children. Some of this, again, is old news for most of you, but we do have to continually identify who are we talking about when we're talking about transporting our pre-K children. You still travel across the state, and you have bus drivers we speak to. Ben Shu's great about getting us into the bus drivers' annual conference. We've been there several times. But sometimes you'll be out talking to bus drivers, and they'll say, well, I'm not sure who's on my bus. I know I've got some pre-K children, I know I've got some special needs children, and I think I have some Head Start children. And what we've been really trying to do with them is letting them know the way universal pre-K is unfolded in West Virginia, and letting them know that if this child's enrolled in West Virginia Universal Pre-K, that's who we're talking about. They don't need to identify them separately any longer as just Head Start, just special needs, just a Board of Ed pre-K. It is important they're aware, though, the services children receive. It's important because of communication pieces. If something were to happen in transportation and it involves a child receiving Head Start services, how's that communicated back to the county collaborative team? How's that brought back so that if we're collaborating and we're meeting the needs of the Head Start requirements for transportation, how are they ensuring that this piece of the policy is being met? If something has broken down, how's it communicated back to the county collaborative team? In some areas, we have a direct link to the transportation director back to the county collaborative team. In others, it's not yet as strong as it probably could be, so it's something to think about in your county collaborative team. Is there some time during a monthly meeting or some specific time during your agendas when you set them up for your county collaborative team meetings that you might want to start including the transportation director, an annual update to them, any changes your county collaborative team's making to county policies involving loading, unloading. We're going to be talking about these issues we're dealing with around bus hauls and pre-K children, how they're arriving at school, who's responsible at school. These are the things that the transportation director might want to be aware of. Now, if you'll notice, the first question we get hit all the time, everybody's been asking, I get a lot of emails. I get emails from legislators. I get emails from the regional Head Start office has emailed me. Is anything going to change in West Virginia about transporting pre-K children? And honestly, the answer is, at this point in time, no. There's not going to be any significant changes in the near future to transportation. Is it a high priority? Absolutely. I would say, especially this year, it has made it into the top 3 issues that legislators want to talk about when it comes to universal pre-K. Transportation is a very, very hot topic. But we all know that if we're going to do it correctly and make it mandatory, a lot of things in policy would have to change. The way we load them, using harnesses, using adults to monitor them on the bus, those things just aren't in place. The money for it. So if you look at 7.1, transportation is considered a support. It is not a mandated service for the overall universal pre-K, unless it's a related service with children with disabilities in accordance with state and federal requirements. And also, we're talking specifically about Head Start requirements. So at this point in time, transportation is still voluntary when you look at transporting all young children, which at this year is nearly 16,000 children in the state's pre-K system. Even though it's not mandated, 58% of the pre-K classrooms in the state are collaborating with Head Start. Again, we're seeing a significant increase annually with that collaboration with Head Start. So it does cause us to kind of pause and at least discuss the Head Start transportation regulations. You're going to see some reference to the National Transportation Safety Association guidelines. Head Start transportation regulation, you can definitely go online. It's very easy to find, especially if you go to eClicks. Some of you are starting to become more familiar with eClicks. Ben Shu and I tend to pull a lot of resources out of eClicks for safety, supervising young children on buses. In fact, in the transportation training that Ben's put together for bus drivers, he's pulled many of the resources directly out of eClicks. So if you're looking for some supplemental material for your bus drivers, or if you want to focus on a parent activity night to focus on bus safety, you're going to find some really, really good resources that you can basically download, print, share, copy right out of eClicks. And later in the presentation, I'll direct you where to go to actually grab those. But the Head Start transportation regulation, keep in mind, 58% of the classrooms are transporting or collaborating with Head Start. So when transportation becomes an issue, it's important to realize that this regulation applies to all Head Start and early Head Start agencies. They're delegate agencies, regardless of whether transportation is provided directly with that Head Start agency. There's 21 in the state right now. If they're leasing vehicles, and even if they're collaborating with the Board of Education to have the Board of Education provide transportation, this regulation kicks in. And generally, you know, I have the, you can identify it if you're searching on eClicks, 45 CFR Part 1310. The agency must assist families with transportation. If they decide not to provide the transportation, they got to be able to provide a reasonable assistance to arrange transportation for the families of the children enrolled. Now, in some areas, we will have folks in the field. We get calls annually from families saying, "Is this fair? I thought we were universal. I thought that if it's good for one, it's good for all." This is no different than the last 2 decades of having the same conversation about children with special needs. Our most at-risk children, there are additional services for them. And in some counties, that additional service does indicate transportation. It's just important of how well you articulate that to the families in your area. The vehicles, it's pretty straightforward. There's a much more comprehensive list online you can get, but it's pretty standard and matches what we require for the state's buses. You can see the list here on the slide. And then not only do they list all of those, they also must follow the state requirements if there's additional above and beyond requirements that the vehicles must be equipped with. Up-to-date list of adults authorized to receive the students, including emergency contacts. You're going to see this in our policy also. Child rosters to ensure that no student is left behind. That becomes important later in the presentation of how you are organizing and communicating with families of children not showing up to school. Child restraint systems for all children. We'll talk about that in a second. And use of school buses or allowable alternative vehicles is also found in the general requirements. Bus monitors and attendants, what's an appropriate ratio? These two things in particular, child restraints and bus monitors, you'll see that when we get into waivers and the Head Start allowing partners, boards of education to transport children, there is a waiver process, and these are the only two things that tend to show up on those waivers. Head Start has not provided a ratio for the school bus, but it's pretty straightforward in general. You know, what's a reasonable number of adults that can easily evacuate the children off the bus, assist with hooking them in the harnesses, monitoring. There's a direct link. You can go to eClicks here for those resources. For those of you that are really into looking at the national standards for transportation, North Carolina Pre-K Transportation Conference 2007, we're going to include that on a website. It has some really good resources if you're looking for additional resources on transportation. The slide that you see now is what you would typically see if your Head Start partner does receive a waiver. These are the two items that Head Start has in the past provided as part of that waiver. They waive the secured and a weight-appropriate child restraint system, and they also will waive the one monitor on board. And you have to wonder nationally why they allow these waivers. And really the quick answer to that is they know that in many cases these are very, very costly, very difficult. It's not about being less safe. It's about if these things were required, many children may not be transported at all, and they do recognize that. So if you're working with a partner and they say that they've received a waiver, that waiver is probably only going to include one or both of these items listed here. And you want to make very, very clear and upfront when you begin building contracts and MOUs, if there is a waiver in place, what it includes, and how, if it's not included, how you're going to meet that standard for children receiving Head Start services. They just don't randomly give these out. There still must be a very good cause for a waiver. And basically, these two items here is what they would consider a good cause. If you're working with your partners and you're trying to receive a waiver, renew a waiver, you still got to provide a good cause why you need this. One would be adherence to a requirement of this part would in itself create a safety hazard, or when compliance with requirements related to child safety restraint systems or bus monitors result in significant disruption to the program. Again, that's what we just discussed. If without that waiver you wouldn't be able to transport children at all, they don't want to see that happening. So again, we'll kind of leave it there with that. And if you have additional questions, email me, write me, talk to your Head Start agency, make an item on your next county collaborative team agenda. So back to the policy 2525. Section 7 now is pretty straightforward. Again, I just want to remind you that even though it's not mandated, if your county decides to pull the trigger and say, you know what, we are going to go ahead and transport pre-K children in our county, then not only do they have to follow all the transportation regulations found out of the Office of Transportation, they would have to meet the requirements found here in Policy 2525 specifically for pre-K children. And the first one you'll see here is the county, excuse me, the county has to agree that bus drivers will be trained in the supervision of young children. When we come out and we do a program review, we will look for this. You know, what's the documentation your county can provide to show that you've provided that training to your bus drivers? Many counties will do that in a lot of different ways. At one point in time, RESAs were providing that training. We still have a few RESA special ed directors that have been trained and can provide that training. We have individual county personnel that's gone through the supervision training. They can provide it, but we are looking for the documentation that bus drivers in your county, if they're transporting pre-K children, have received training in supervision of young children. And Ben Shu has identified at least 2 trainings that will meet that requirement. One would be the one we're going to discuss here, and then online there's a separate link you can go to for an additional supervision training. Second one you'll see in B is children transported by a school bus who attend a pre-K classroom and are not yet enrolled in kindergarten will sit in a segregated area of the vehicle with other pre-K children. This is one of those minor changes in the last 5 or 6 years, and basically one word has changed in this policy, and it's the word segregated. In the past, that word was actually designated. They used to have a designated area. And over the years, because of safety issues, that word has been changed to segregated. And we get a lot of calls and folks ask, well, yes, they must be segregated, but does that still mean a pre-K child can sit with their cousin that's in 5th grade? And so when they get off the bus, that 5th grade child is going to be walking them home. Can they sit with a sibling? The answer is very clear, no. They may not. They may not sit with children outside of pre-K. They must be segregated and sitting only with other pre-K children. Section C, staff shall be available to assist children on and off buses at the West Virginia pre-K site. You must have somebody designated that meets that bus at the school or at the program where children are being dropped off. At home, if a parent or guardian cannot meet the bus, there must be a designated parent or guardian to assist the child. Now, many counties have started building their own county policies around this, really being a little clearer in their county of who that designated person can be. You can actually create a county policy based off Section C and have some protocol in your county to say who is that person. Who's the parent? Who can the parent assign to that? Section D, this is pretty common. If there's any transportation directors on the phone, this is a very common one. They're used to this one. Bus drivers must inspect the bus at all final drop-off points to assure that no children are left on the bus. Inspections are charted. They log those. Some of you are asking, you know, where can I find that log? You want to talk to your county transportation director. Typically, those logs are kept with them or at the county office of those daily inspections and with their supervisor. These are not typically inspections that if we come in and do a program review, we would expect the county collaborative team, county director to have on file there with them. This would be something that the county transportation director will be able to share or verify was on file. At each pre-K site where bus transportation is provided, a designated person must follow up with the family of any child who is not present or accounted for each day. So if you have a roster of children that are supposed to be being picked up and dropped off at school and they don't show up, you need to have a log to show that somebody is following up with that family to find out why. Now, this doesn't mean that if you're a school and you're aware that Johnny's not going to be at school, you've got a note from home that says, hey, we're going to be gone or he's going to be out for the next 3 days. That will suffice. These are the children that you don't know why they're not at school and they're supposed to be transported. There must be somebody at the school that's making that follow-up call and logging that the parents have been contacted, making every reasonable attempt to find out why that child was not on the bus. So this comes back to Section A and the bus driver training. You'll see a link at the bottom. It's a Google site that's put together. At the end of the presentation, I'll take you to the Office of Early Learning's website, direct you directly to this Google link, where you can actually pull down the supervision. So what you'll see in this PowerPoint that I'm going to skip through, everything in Section 2 is specifically about transporting or supervising young children. And it'll take bus drivers through the challenges and what to expect from a 3- and 4-year-old. It has some real basic child development pieces in there. It has some guidance approaches to how to deal with some behaviors on a bus, as well as resources that a transportation director, a county early childhood team member can use with the bus drivers and families. And again, I'm going to skip through a lot of this. It's some really basic stuff on 3- and 4-year-olds and approaches to discipline on a bus. It even gives some scenarios for bus drivers of how to actually give them some language to say to children. Aggressive behavior will be addressed. And these would be direct links to resources. And I will tell you, the last link you see on this slideshow is Head Start Transportation Pathfinder. If you've not visited that site and you're interested, you're getting ready to start transport in your county, or even if you have been transporting in your county, the Head Start Transportation Pathfinder site is a very good resource that you might want to start with. So, specifically loading and unloading children. These are some of the things that we typically see when we come out and do program reviews, or if Ben Shu's office gets a phone call and they're not sure what the proper protocol was to be. The policy is really written so it gives some very broad overarching requirements, but it's also written so that the local county collaborative team can work with the county, establish some county processes and protocols. Some of you have actually done that, and you're able to share with us your county protocol for these things. Others, sometimes they don't pop up until there's an issue and you decide you need a county process or protocol. For example, at the West Virginia Pre-K site, sometimes it's very difficult to know what can or can't we do with 4-year-old children when they get off the bus. Where should they go? Some schools, all children exit the bus and go to a bus room or a holding room where all children in the elementary school are waiting to be released to their classes. What we have to remind counties is that when those children in pre-K get off the bus, those children are now under Policy 2525. Everything with 2525 must remain in place. So if these children are attending a bus hall, it's still 2 adults to 20 children. It's still, are they being engaged? Are they, not sitting idly for long periods of time? This has challenged a lot of counties to think about, how do they set up those rooms for those children? Can they provide centers and reading activities that they could do? Or, in some cases, do we need to figure out a schedule where the 4-year-olds are going directly to their classroom instead of a bus hall? There's nothing in a policy that says you can't do either one. It's just being able to establish processes and protocols in your county that say we still are able to maintain Policy 2525 requirements during that time period. Sometimes we will find counties that they say, listen, we do have 2 adults supervising this group of children, but they're also supervising kindergarten through 2nd grade. That would not be allowable. The 2 adults would have to be per 20 children of preschool, specifically supervising those 20 children. The other thing that comes up oftentimes is at the child's drop-off site at home. What's the county's process and protocol that's been established for nobody was there? Where does the child go? Does the bus driver know the protocol to either bring them back to the school, to a central location so that the families can be contacted? We see a lot of variances in this piece. Some counties will set up processes and protocols that require the child to be brought back to the school, and maybe it's the school administrator or a point person that's there contacting the family. In one case, I know a very small county, the children are actually taken to the County Board of Education office, and the parents must pick their child up there. The other thing is, who can pick the children up? In one county, you might have a process or protocol that does allow the parent to sign over the pickup rights to an older sibling. In some other counties, they're saying, no, it must be an adult. That, again, is left up to your county collaborative team to really come up with those processes and protocols. The third one you see here is seating arrangements on the bus itself. Now, common sense might say that the segregated area that most bus drivers will set up would be at the front of the bus. We see that 99% of the time that it is directly in front of the bus. But again, that is left up to the county, working with the transportation director of how they're going to set up those processes and protocols, what they expect to see when they monitor a bus, where are those 4-year-olds sitting. Documenting daily inspections we've talked about, and the West Virginia Pre-K site designee. Is there a point person assigned that says you're responsible every day for being at that bus, 4-year-olds come off? You know, we have been in cases where January, February were kind of that past the halfway point in the school year, and we get some counties that say, well, they're 4, they know the routine now, we've kind of become relaxed on that. They know where to go when they get off the bus. That is, as far as the Office of Transportation and the Office of Early Learning concerned, that is very, very unacceptable. Again, they are 4. They must be supervised. So just because it's January, February, March, getting to the end of the school year, you're not going to be able to slide in and say, oh, you know, part of our transition is getting these children used to getting off the bus and going on their own to the bus hall or to their classroom. No, this pre-K designee needs to be the same person all year long, and if they're absent, there needs to be a backup, somebody who knows the process and protocol, who's there for them, and can follow up with those phone calls. This is reiterating what we just discussed. Number 3 is where we see sometimes if there is an issue, it's a breakdown because the designee wasn't there and there wasn't a backup. Either a classroom assistant or another teacher wasn't aware that that person was absent and there was nobody to greet the children. You may be shocked in some cases, you know, even though it's January, February, and things should be in a pretty good routine by now. We have had the cases where we've still had a 4-year-old get off a bus at the wrong school and actually walk in and participate in a wrong classroom and not being aware until the teacher shows up and takes attendance that a child is in the wrong school. Now, I know that is kind of, you know, how could that possibly happen? Therefore, it happens. On the flip side, when I first heard that story, I thought, wow, how socially competent is this child that they weren't concerned. They felt apparently safe to be there. But again, the designee was not there to check. Same thing with parents. We have to continually remind parents every day they must be there to meet the bus or their designee. It is up to you of how you decide to allow parents to designate somebody. For the 2013 school year, as well as next year, I can tell you that one of the main issues in the program review has been transportation because of some of these issues. It ends up becoming a liability to the county if children are lost. If you're in a county where you're transporting to a central location and they have to transfer to get on another bus, who's the designee to make sure they're on that other bus? And again, who's the designee when they finally reach their final destination? And that still does happen in some counties because of the way they have to transport. We do have 3- and 4-year-olds getting on a bus at home, being transported to location A, where they get off that bus, have to be transferred to another bus to reach their final destination. Just making sure that that designee is there in each one of those transitions. These are just simple questions that we've already covered. These would definitely be questions to include in the training with bus drivers. The County Collaborative Early Childhood Team, to bring it back full circle, should be the ones writing these county policies and procedures with the county office. One of the things that we're going to be looking at next year is, can you actually upload a document that shows that you have a written county policy and procedure that includes transportation. So every year, the County Collaborative Team, those of you that are County Collaborative Early Childhood Directors, you're used to verifying your data. And one of those data pieces you verify every August is, do we provide transportation in our county? Who do we provide it to? Is it for all? Is it only for children with special needs? Is it only for Head Start children? Is it a mixed batch of how we do it? You're going to have to provide and show that you now, after 10 years of doing this, do you have a written policy and procedure for your county, so that if you were to leave or if changes were made to the County Collaborative Team, anybody stepping in would be able to pick it up and say, that's our county policy. You're more than welcome. Ben Shu is a great resource. If you're thinking about pulling the trigger and saying, you know, I think we're ready to transport young learners in our county, don't hesitate. Call my office. Call Ben Shu's office. We'll work with you. If you are experiencing difficulty finding somebody to do the training for your bus drivers, call us. We will either find a trainer or we will work with the counties and the school systems to assist in providing that training. So as the school year approaches for next year and you need this training, let us know. We will either find somebody in your area that can provide it, or one of us will actually come out and do it for you. I'm going to pull over the website, and just to let you know where to find the additional resources. Under Universal Pre-K, if you scroll down, you'll see West Virginia Pre-K Leadership System of Support. Under that system of support, there are pre-K workshops for school administrators. It was a series that we did some time ago, and we've left it and trying to continually update it so you can still access those resources. It's going to take you to a Google site, and these are some of the key workshops that we had done in the past for school administrators. And if you scroll down almost to the bottom, you'll see Transporting Young Learners. You can actually go into that. You can pull down the PowerPoint from today. You can access that. There's a quick reference. It's a 2-page document that you can give to bus drivers, transportation directors, folks in your community that outline this policy and the requirements. And you can also directly take a link to Smart Horizons. That's another resource that Ben Shu has posted here where you can access transportation-related resources. And you can actually access the guidelines and recommendations from the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. So, again, I told you to be short. If there's any questions, you're more than welcome to post them. And access this, use it at your will. In fact, if you would like to have it in a PowerPoint format, email me. I'd be glad to provide it to you so that you can adjust it, tweak it, and make it fit your needs. The ones online you're going to find right now are PDF versions. But if you'd like the PowerPoint copy, email me. I'd be glad to provide it to you.
Okay, we're just going to leave the webinar up for just a few minutes. That way, if you do have questions, your collaborative team wants just a couple minutes to hash out some questions, then you can post them on the chat section of the dashboard. So we'll just kind of be quiet for a few minutes and see if you have any questions.